Hello, and welcome back as I report from another random rooftop. Fun fact, the first video I ever made on this channel was from a very similar rooftop. But anyway, I digress. Today we're going to talk about day 2 of my weekend in Las Vegas, specifically my weekend at the Venetian where I played some 100, 200. Now, in case you missed the last video, they had a stream. I covered all those hands and it went pretty well. But on day 2, the cameras were shut off, so it's going to be an old school style vlog today where I have the camera on the table and I film my hole cards. But before we jump into the hands, a couple of quick things to go over. Number 1, I am playing with Brad Owen this week on Hustler Casino Live. By the time you guys see this video, that session will have already happened, but that's going to be covered in my next video. So if you guys are looking forward to that, make sure to subscribe and stay tuned for that next one. Secondly, I'm going to be traveling back to Austin, Texas to play at the Lodge and some more Vegas poker this month as well. So a lot of travel coming up, lots of cool content. Make sure to stay tuned for that as well. For now, that's enough yapping. Let's just get into the poker and I'll chat with you guys later. All right, back at the Venetian, but this time we are off stream. Same stakes, however, 100, 200 with the big blind ante and the squid game continuously on. In this first hand, there's one limp before Oaken makes it 2,000 in late position. I look down at king queen suited in the small blind, and almost every single time I think a re-raise is in order, but occasionally sneaking in there with a call is also fine in my opinion, so that's what I do. Big blind folds, the limper also folds, so we go heads up to a flop of 7-6 deuce rainbow, but there is a club out there. I check it and he checks it back. The turn card is the 6 of hearts, and I think now it's fine to bluff. He's going to have a lot of ace highs, and I could have many pocket pairs that play this way pre-flop, so I lead for 1,500. Oaken makes the call and we see the 3 of diamonds on the river. Of course, not expecting to win with king high at this point, so I ask myself how much would I bet if I had something like pocket 5s or pocket 8s or whatever, and I think the answer is around 1/3 pot. So that's what I do with king high. I throw in 2,600 bucks. Oaken now goes into the tank for quite a while, but then eventually folds. Later on, he said he had ace high, so this one works out quite nicely. Let's move to the next one where there's a button raised to 800 bucks, and I look down at Jack 7 offsuit in the small blind. I jump into action by making it $4,000, and really there's no good reason to do this aside from the fact that 1, the squid game is on, so it incentivizes you to win hands. But then again, Jack 7 off out of position is not really enough of an excuse. Then again, you know, in a private game like this, occasionally stepping out of line is certainly encouraged. So that's what I'm doing here. Immediate bad news though, as the big blind, who hasn't acted yet in this one, he jams all in for 10K. The button, aka the original raiser, he gets out of the way, but of course I can't do that since it's only 6K more to call. Even if he shows me ace king, we're getting a price with 2 live cards. So I make the call, and just like that, we have an all-in pre-flop with Jack 7 offsuit. We elect to run it twice. There's absolutely no help on the first board, but the second board brings a jack on the turn, which perhaps might be good enough, and it is, as my opponent flips over pocket 7s. So we were in terrible shape looking for a jack or some sort of miracle straight. We do find that jack on the second run out and end up chopping, which of course is almost best case scenario. In the next hand, there's an early position raised to 1,800. I look down at pocket 9s in late position and decide to just call. Could occasionally re-raise, but this time I just call. And then the button jams all in. This is the same player who went all in last hand. He jams for $9,600. It gets back to the early position raiser, and after a bit of deliberation, he decides to just call this all in, which immediately raised some red flags in my mind because I felt that I was being trapped by some sort of bigger pocket pair. The player in early position only has 25K behind, so I would imagine if he had something like ace king or ace queen, he might have just shoved all in an effort to try to get me out of the pot. So the fact that he's just calling, to me at least, seems like he's not concerned with keeping me in the hand. But at the same time, pocket 9s are still ahead of, you know, smaller pairs and overcards, what have you. So I don't want to accidentally fold the best hand by overthinking what someone else might have. I decide to stick around and make the call. And we go to a flop, which is an absolute delight. 9-4 deuce rainbow. We flopped the nuts in a bloater with one player already all in. The only downside to that is that, you know, the players in the pot still are so disincentivized to bluff, because even if you get the other guy out, you still have to beat the player who's all in. So it's kind of like a negative free roll since there's no side pot yet. He checks and I decide to check it back, hoping he catches up. Again, he only has 25k behind, which is less than the pot size. If we were really deep, I would probably just bet. But anyway, I check it back and we see the 8 of clubs on the turn. Of course, I would have liked to see an ace or a king, you know, something that might connect with him. He checks again, and for a second time, I decide to check it back, underrepresenting my hand greatly, but thinking to myself, if he hits top pair on the river, we could probably get it all in, and if he was somehow trapping with aces or kings, that will also happen on the river. The river card, however, is a bit interesting. It's the ace of clubs, so now I'm crossing my fingers that he didn't slow play kings or queens or whatever. But my opponent checks a third time, and of course now we have to put some money in. I toss in 14k, and he shows me queen 6 of clubs and folds. So that whole read that I had pre-flop where he was trapping me by just calling the all-in, dead wrong. My man is just out here gambling with queen 6 suited. Of course, that's not good enough to beat my set, and the player who went all in pre-flop is also unable to beat my set. So we scooped this one. Would have been nicer to get some action post-flop, but of course, pretty good result nonetheless. In the next hand, there's a late position raise to 1,000. The button makes it 3,000, and now is a good time to look down at this hand. Pocket kings in the small blind. I'm going to make a raise of my own up to 8,000. The guy who made it 1k, he's out of there, but the button sticks around for another 5,000, and we go heads up to a flop, which is not ideal for these kings. It's ace 4 deuce rainbow. Still, given that this is a 4-bet pot, I'm probably going to bet all my hands for a small size, especially on this kind of board. So I toss in 4,000, a little under quarter pot. My opponent makes the call, which, you know, mixed feelings about that. He might have an ace or he might have a hand we're still beating. Who knows? Turn card is a 10 of diamonds, and now I'm going to go into pot control mode because I just don't have that great of a hand anymore given the situation. So I check it, and now my opponent fires out $10,000. And look, if he's bluffing, we're probably just going to have to get owned, but I don't want to give any money to someone who's got a pair of aces when I have pocket kings, so I make a reluctant fold, and my opponent flips over ace 9 of clubs. So I guess it could have been worse if I stuck around for his $10,000 bet. But anyway, we move to the next one where there's a $400 straddle on. I open it up to $1,200 with pocket jacks. The small blind now makes it $5,000, and considering that this was a shorthanded game and everyone was really active pre-flop, I think normally calling is probably fine, but in this kind of game, jacks are almost always worth another raise. So I make it $13,200. Back to my opponent now, who apparently was not really messing around with his raise to 5,000 because he jams all in for 40k. All right, man, I make the call. If he's got an overpair, so be it. But we're still beating 10s and 9s, and of course, hands like ace king or ace queen, whatever. We run it twice. My opponent's got ace king. There's a king on the first one, but the jack comes on the turn, so we get there, so to speak. Second board also king high, but no other jacks to be found. Despite turning a straight draw on the turn, we can't catch up, and just like that, we end up chopping this 80k pot. I guess running it once would have been nice, but that's life. In the next hand, there's a raise to 1,000. I defend the big blind with queen jack off, and we go to a flop of 10-8-8. Interesting board because we have 2 overs, a straight draw, and of course, I'm going to be more likely to have trips on this kind of board than my opponent, simply because I defended the big blind, so I'm going to have an 8 quite often, whereas he raised from early position, shouldn't have too many 8s in there. So when I check and he continues for 1,000, I decide to turn my hand into a bluff. Of course, this serves to balance out the times I actually do have it, so I make it $3,000 to go. My opponent makes the call, so I'm thinking he probably has overcards, maybe a 10, you know, stuff like that. Maybe even an overpair, right? Like jacks and above. He makes the call. Turn card is the 6 of diamonds, and now it's time to really come down with the pressure. I make it $8,000, a pot-sized bet. hoping to fold out all the ace highs and what have you, but my opponent makes the call again, and it's at this point that I think we should just give up, because sure, he's going to call the check raise on the flop with a lot of hands, but he's not going to call the $8,000 turn bet with a lot of hands. So when the river comes the king of spades, I decide to just wave the white flag and check it. My opponent bets some amount, I don't really know, but I just fold and he shows me 9-8 offsuit. So I guess so much for my analysis pre-flop of him not having an 8, huh? Nice hand to him. We give him some good amount of money with queen high. And we move to this next one where middle position raises to 2,000. This is Gaston, same player from the previous vlog, also a frequent player on Hustler. Anyway, he makes it 2K. I look down at king jack offsuit on the button, and with a hand like this, I think it's fine to occasionally take the aggressive route and re-raise, especially in position where we have some removal to strong stuff like ace king and pocket kings, pocket jacks, whatever. So I make it 7,000. Everyone folds, but Gaston does make the call, so we go heads up to a flop of 9-7-5 rainbow. He checks, I continue for a small bet of 5,000, and he makes the call. Not looking too good. I'm probably only going to bluff on turn cards that help me out. And the queen of diamonds is exactly that. Not only is it an overcard to the board, let's say he's got something like 10-9 suited or 7-6, maybe pocket eights, whatever, but we do pick up a straight draw and a fake flush draw, right, with the jack of diamonds. So a lot of stuff working here. He checks. I decide to continue applying the pressure, thinking to myself, I am going to go all in on many different river cards. Some of them I'm probably going to give up, but we'll have to see what develops. I size up for around 2/3, $18,000. And then he announces all in. So, all right, I just fold, and he shows 10-9 of diamonds, which is second pair and a flush draw. I guess in a sense, I should be grateful that he went all in because, you know, we don't torch more money on the river. But, you know, it's also a shame that I didn't have a better hand, because if I had like a pair, say something like king queen or whatever, we could have got it all, but not meant to be this time. This one goes to Gaston, and we move to the next hand where the $400 straddle is on. I open it up to 1,200 with 6-5 of spades, and then the small blind makes it 4,300. We're sitting pretty deep, so in position, I decide to call with this suited connector. I still think this is a little bit too loose. Probably best to just let this one go, as boring as that sounds, but not this time. I make the call, and we go to a flop of king, king, queen, with not a single spade out there, so that's about as bad as it gets for my exact hand. But my opponent checks, and that means at least we're going to get to see a turn card. I check it back, and the dealer puts out the 3 of hearts. Still absolutely nothing going on for me, but now my opponent bets $6,000. And I know what you're thinking, where the hell is this hand going? Well, you're about to witness a very, very, I don't want to say bad, even though that's what it is. Let's call it interesting call on my behalf. That's right, I toss in the $6,000. This is known as the bluff call, or at least in my book. I don't know if that's really a term, but the way I think about it is it's going to look pretty strong if I call here, right? Like maybe I'm slow playing a hand like trips, maybe I have ace queen, maybe I have, you know, jack 10 of diamonds, stuff like that. Point being, it's going to look like I have something, and then we could try to bluff the river. Now, of course, this only works if your opponent is betting with some sort of mediocre holding. In this case, that would include hands like ace 10 suited, maybe pocket jacks, pocket 10s, whatever. So let's see what happens. I make the call, and we see the 3 of diamonds on the river, double pairing the board, and of course, bringing in the backdoor flush draw. My opponent now checks, and, you know, he might be laying in the weeds with the trap, but if that's the case, he's going to earn some money because I'm going to stick to the plan and assemble a bet. In terms of sizing, this isn't going to be fun, but I think a big bet is in order here, simply because the board is double paired, and that means I'm representing a full house or pretty much nothing at all. Maybe a flush might take this sizing once in a blue moon, but even that probably I wouldn't. So anyway, I decide to bet huge. $30,000, which is around 1.5 times the pot size. We don't get snap called, but then again, he's probably going to raise if he has a king. So yeah, I'm still just sitting here sweating, hoping my opponent folds, of course, since we're just playing the board. And after some thought, he decides to fold. Very welcome sight, and I turn over the 6-5 suited, which is pretty funny, at least to the rest of the table, maybe not my opponent, but of course, we get it done this time. This kind of play is not necessarily recommended, but boy, is it fun when it works out. In the next one, there's 2 limps. I am one of the last 2 players who needs to win a hand in order to avoid losing the Squid Game. So I decide to get in there with King 4 offsuit by raising it to $3,000. My simple train of thought here is these limpers don't seem too strong and they're probably just going to fold, at which point I can win the hand and not lose around $4,000 or $5,000 in the Squid Game. However, that plan is quickly thwarted by Gaston, who makes the call after limping in. Only 2 of us remain as we go to a flop of 10-9-3 with 2 spades. I do have the king of spades, but aside from that, not much going on. He checks. I decide to bet small, 2,000. Looking back, I think I should have sized up a little bit on this kind of flop, but anyway, I decide to bet 2K. He makes the call, which of course is not great, but we improve on the turn. It's the king of diamonds, giving me top pair, which against a player like Gaston is always nice because he plays so wide and so loose. Even though I don't have a kicker whatsoever, this is still a strong enough hand to get value from, at least in my opinion, against that kind of player. So when he checks, I size up for $12,000, targeting flush draws, straight draws, a pair of 10s, maybe even a pair of 9s, just random stuff that we're beating now and he might not be convinced with yet. So anyway, I bet 12,000, and after some thought, Gaston does make the call. So things are looking pretty good here, and we go to a river, which is the 2 of diamonds. Doesn't really change anything at all, but what's weird is Gaston now leads out on this river card, but he chooses a very small size, 12,000 bucks. I have no idea what this is about. I don't really love it, but considering how small of a bet this is, you know, like a third pot, we're getting a great price with top pair, and he might be blocking with something like a 10, queen 9, who knows. I, of course, toss in the call, and I'm disappointed to see queen jack offsuit. My man's got the nuts. So what I thought was a pretty sweet turn card was actually a complete disaster. I guess the only silver lining is not too much money went in on the river, but he does take a good chunk of our chips into his stack, so that kind of sucks, but perhaps we can get some instant revenge on the very next shuffle where Gaston limps in again, and I make it 2,000, this time with 7-4 of spades. I'm going to keep isolating these limps, but I don't know if doing it with such bad hands is the best idea. Whatever, here we go. I have 7-4 suited. Gaston makes the call, and we go to a flop of 7-5-3. We have top pair and a straight draw, but this board is almost always going to favor him, so when he checks, I decide to check it back and see what happens on the turn, which is a blank, the queen of hearts. I guess it's not that much of a blank, you know, if he's limping in with some queen high type of hands, of course he now improves, but I'm not too worried about it. Until my man Gaston bets $8,000, nearly double the pot size on this turn card, putting me in a pretty uncomfortable spot with a single pair of 7s. But then again, I didn't check back the flop just to full the turn. I'm somewhat trapping with a hand like mine, and even if he does have me beat, we have some straight draw possibilities on the river. So anyway, I stick around with a call, and we get a weird card on the end. It's the 4 of clubs, giving me 2 pair. Of course, a lot of bluffs now get there for him, though. Let's say he's got something like 6-8, or really just any 6. Perhaps a hand like ace-deuce, whatever. Unlikely, but, you know, certainly possible. Gaston doesn't slow down either. He now bets $15,000. I know you guys can't see that. You only see 1 chip, but trust me, there are another 2 5K chips right behind that bet. So 15,000 into 20K, putting me in a weird spot, but I don't know. After I underrepresent my hand on the flop, I think we just have to call on this river. We're even possibly beating some value hands like 5-3, let's say. So I make the call, and he says, you got it. Apparently he doesn't have anything, so I just turn over my cards, and yeah, 2 pair is good. We collect this $50,000 pot. Not quite big enough to make back what we lost in the previous one, but pretty damn close, so I'm happy with it. Anyway, that was the last interesting one for this session. So as always, thank you guys for watching, and stay tuned for some final thoughts. Yeah, so as you guys just saw, not necessarily my best day, not even close. I ended up having a pretty lame session, although I had fun. It was a fun group, and there were definitely some interesting hands sprinkled in there. There was also a whole lot of losing chips sprinkled in there as well. So in the end, I ended up losing somewhere in the neighborhood of 30K, I believe.
Could have been worse, but definitely could have been better also. That's all I have for today, guys. As always, thank you for watching. Thanks for all the support, and I will catch you all very soon. Until then, good luck at your tables. Peace.